Nadira Goffe, welcome to Head on Fire. Thanks so much for being here and kicking
Thanks.
off this new season of my show.
I'm very excited about this. Thank you for having me, especially since this all started with some very, very low grade TikTok beef.
Honestly, aren't the best internet friendships made through low
Yes.
grade TikTok beef?
Yes, they are.
So, for people who do not know you or your work, tell people who you are and what it is that you do.
I am a culture writer at Slate and occasional podcaster at Slate. And when I'm not at Slate, I am crying or playing video games or crocheting or crying with alcohol. So that's me. That's what I do. That's my free time.
Oh my God. So, we have the same hobbies. I'm
Yes.
so thrilled.
All the same hobbies.
So we first internet met through a conversation about a show that I think we both love,
Yes.
called The 10th Kingdom, and we are going to get there. But the first thing I want to talk about is you are a culture writer, and I'm curious because I feel like even the term pop culture has become a slightly confused one these days. So I have a question for you. I've talked to a few different people and kind of come at this subject from different angles. Like I've talked to a professor of pop culture. I've talked to a critic of culture I talked to Jerry Saltz over at New York Magazine, art critic. But I haven't really talked to like a culture journalist yet. Somebody who doesn't just comment on culture, but kind of contextualizes it. So my first question for you is, what even is pop culture anymore? Because we have this conversation about a loss of monoculture all the time. We can't make any more American Idols because nobody is watching American. We aren't all watching the same shows. We can't make any more pop stars because we aren't all listening to the same radio. It seems like the hot new show is something streaming on a platform that you either have never heard of or can't access. So then what is pop culture in this new era of siloed media?
Oh gosh, what a big question.
Thank you so much.
And not something that I ever have to grapple with on the daily. I struggle to answer this because I feel like, as with culture these days, the answer is kind of multifold. Like pop culture, monoculture exists in a way and it doesn't exist. And I think for anyone who says it absolutely doesn't exist, I think the Timothée Chalamet lookalike contest, which I went to the very first one in New York City, I think is a perfect example of proof that the monoculture in some way does exist. Thousands of people showed up to see one curly haired, pale twink, or people who looked like him. They didn't even think he was going to be there. And then he showed up, but he showed up and no one noticed because he had doppelgangers running around. But, it's like you have to understand. Everyone who was there has to understand who Timothée Chalamet is, what he looks like, and what his sort of essence is in order to vote or decide on whether or not a stranger has captured all the things that make up who he is, right? And what is monoculture if not understanding what the deal is with a 28-year-old skinny, I don't know, consumption chic, beautifully talented man dating a Jenner is, right? That's monoculture. However,
I need one of those rush order t-shirts with everything you just said, as a quote on the shirt right now.
Only if you give me a cut.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm going to make exactly two of these. One for you, one for me.
Absolutely.
What is monoculture if not the twink Timothée Chalamet consumption sheet?
Twinkageddon. It was Twinkageddon. Just everywhere you looked, Chalamet symbiotes. Just. But I really...
honestly, with as ubiquitous as he is in so many genres, there's not. You could say the same thing about Zendaya.
Right. No, exactly. And this is someone who, and I think, well, to me, what specifically makes Timothée Chalamet such proof of the theory is that he didn't start off on a Disney Channel show the way Zendaya did, right? Those shows, that channel is is built to make Hollywood stars,
Sure,
right? Like there's a
sure.
reason
Yeah,
why the record company is called Hollywood Records. It's like supposed to make these tentpole stars. But this is an actor who started off, you know, in smaller roles in Christopher Nolan films, who got his start in indie films, but it was his twink likeness and his talent and perhaps having sex with a peach that really catapulted him to the levels that he is at today. And I think like that is only powered by, yes, the internet, but the internet creating monoculture. However, it's not like the era of, you know, your Tom Cruises, your Brad Pitts, where you could be 8 or you could be 75 and you know who that is. If I
sure.
went to my grandmother and showed her a picture of Timothy Chalamet, she would say, "Oh, she's pretty." Like there is no, you know, she wouldn't. But shout out to my grandma. She would be like, "I don't know who this is. Why are you showing me a picture of this white man?" Uh,
Fully Kiki Palmer. I am sorry to this man.
I am sorry to this man.
I'm
If I
sorry to
saw
this
him on the
man.
street, I wouldn't know a thing. Like it's different. You know, we don't have monoculture in the way that we used to, but it still exists on some level. There were thousands of people there, and that event became so popular that it sparked multiple other lookalike contests around the globe, right? Like that's something that legitimately happened.
Uh-huh.
However, I do think it's true that with the internet, people who have been into smaller things or look down upon things or niche parts of culture have found their people. And so now what you have is you have a much more fractured cultural landscape, right? Where you can have your monoculture, but monoculture only goes so far because you
Sure.
have like your e-girls and your cottagecore and your dark academia and your, you know, and it's like
Yeah.
before you
Yeah.
just had prep. Like
Yeah.
it was just preppy. And
Yeah.
now you have all of these other different things. And so, you know, it both exists and it doesn't exist. And I think finding the threads that helps us understand what slots what into a specific category, like what makes something niche or what catapults something into massive monoculture is something that I am always fascinated by.
I will say, as a lifelong comic geek,
Yeah.
like in the comic shops in the back, reading the monthly issues as they came out, like addict. Like my monitor sits on the DC Comics Encyclopedia and the Marvel Encyclopedia. Like I keep these encyclopedias on my desk at all times because you
Yeah.
know sometimes you have to emergency reference who Darkstar is or something.
Absolutely.
You know, and who's North Star? Oh, he's the first gay marriage. Anyways,
Right.
um, so it's so strange to me to think of like comic books. Oh, it's such it's such major culture that it's ousting everything else out. Like it's suddenly we're the problem. And that's been weird to see. Like
Yeah.
it went from like you were bullied for being into superheroes to all that
Marvel.
we have is superheroes.
Yeah. 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 And I think even then, the idea of superhero or a fan of superhero content is like is also something that has transformed, right? But
Mm-hmm.
now, but here's the thing. These are people who are into movies. They're not all people who are into comic books. If you read the
Mm-hmm.
comic books, then you know that Ta-Nehisi Coates is writing like black superhero stuff
Yep.
now, right? You don't know that if you necessarily watch the movies. It's still a sort of niche fandom area, but the movies have become so ubiquitous that yes, all of my colleagues do complain about Marvel and the things that it has done to franchises in the film industry ad nauseum.
I will say my only feedback to that to anybody who is like looking at all of this and like, well, there's no way for me to keep up with all of it. I never kept up with all of it. I
Oh
don't think you're
no,
supposed to keep up
you're
with
no
all of
God.
it.
Well, unless you're me and it's your
I,
job, and
no,
even
I mean,
then,
but
it's
like
impossible.
in the comics, like when this was all just
Oh
relegated to issues of comics, I wasn't, I
yeah,
mean, like, honestly, like, I never really read a lot of Avengers. Like, the Avengers were like a C tier team when it came to Marvel
yeah,
stuff. Like, it was all X-Men. So I read all the X titles. I read Wonder Woman. I read some Superman sometimes. I sometimes read Batman. You know, like, I read Zatanna anytime she had like you read what interests you, you watch what interests you, you keep up with what interests you, and then you read the crossovers when they happen. And that was my, I mean, like, there is
Yeah.
now so much superhero. I'm like, this is just what it's like being a comic fan.
Yeah.
Keep up
Yeah.
with the storylines you want, and just watch the crossovers when they happen. You don't have to watch everything. This is really what
Yeah.
it's like being like, I remember watching Quantumania and going, this is what it's like reading a comic book. It's, what's the explanation? I don't know. Who cares?
Who cares?
I
Right.
don't care.
Yeah, I think a lot of cultural critics would say that their issue isn't with the content itself, though of course it is, but more so what Marvel being successful has done to the film industry writ large. Now we're getting into this era of, will we ever have an original film ever again, right? And of course we do, every year we do, but not nearly to the layers that we used to. And now everything has to be franchisable in some way, and studios for a long time, because of the success of Marvel, thought that that's how you were guaranteed to make some money. But I also think that even that is kind of running out now. People are craving original ideas. There's a reason
But
why.
even people putting out successful original content, Ryan Coogler and Sinners, he
Yeah,
didn't really get to do that until he had enough financial backing from his franchise work to be able
to
to
do it.
mostly
And
finance
even
this and get
then,
all the money together to
And
take
even
a bet
then,
on it.
he still threw in a mid-credit scene and a post-credit scene.
Yep.
Like the way that these movies are revolutionizing even original content and storytelling, I think is really interesting. And I don't necessarily hate it, because you're always going to get your everything everywhere all at once's, right? Like you're always going to have your past lives, your standout original films. A24 exists for a reason. But I do think that they're onto something in the way that, I don't know, they can be curmudgeon-y about how it's changed culture in the film industry, but I also think it's exciting to see people excited about movies at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I think it's our job maybe to highlight the smaller movies that no one else is going to highlight, or that they're not going to see. And I actually think that people are starting to crave that more than the endless sequels that are just getting churned out, right? Like sequels sometimes nowadays, when you get to the third or fourth one, they don't have a story anymore. Their studios are just pumping them out to make money, and people they're feeling that, and they don't like it. And so I do think that there's also this tension now with the way that even monoculture in terms of film content or the industry, I don't know, I think there's tension there.
I have wanted to ask you that
Yeah.
about this churning. It seems like the only thing that we get to have, especially in a theater, especially that gets a wide release, that gets that financial investment, nostalgia bait, rehashed IP, endless sequels. Those are the only. I'm looking at what's out this weekend, and I'm like, how many Mission Impossible? How?
And you know what? I saw that
I fear
for
that
the
mission
first-
was possible. That mission was possible. I fear, because you got 17 of these.
You got 500. I saw that movie. That movie is almost 3 hours. Okay,
It is
let me
not.
preface.
What?
Yes. Yep.
I haven't. Full disclosure, I haven't seen a Mission Impossible movie since Tom Cruise
Let me preface this by
didn't jump a couch on Oprah.
that man is crazy. God, I love him. Let me preface all of this by saying that there are two absolutely true facts about myself. One, I love espionage. I also love organized crime, but that's a different podcast. I love espionage. No, not yet, but I've been too busy, but it's like top of my list. I cannot.
Go into it blind. Go into it knowing nothing.
And I know nothing, and I
Okay,
try
good.
and keep it that way because I'm
Okay,
so
good.
excited to watch that. But I love espionage and I love organized crime. However, as someone who loves espionage, I've seen two Mission Impossibles in my life. They are the one that just came out and the one that previously came out right before it. So
Oh, you never saw the original?
No, I haven't. No, I know it's.
That was good. It was good.
I heard.
Hey, hot take. The first
Hot
Mission
take.
Impossible is a good movie.
Wow, you don't say.
Hot
No
take.
one has ever said that to me before.
Where
one
he
of
like
these
comes
days,
down on the thing and stops.
and
Spray it, and you can see
I've
it on,
seen
on the eyeglasses.
and I've seen that clip, but I haven't actually seen the full movie. I cannot wait for the extended weekend I will have where I just watch like 17 hours.
My
of Mission
life
Impossible.
for an extended weekend.
And I know that I will do that because I do that almost every year for the Fast and Furious franchise because I also love Vroom Vroom. So, so
I
listen, they're
haven't
about
seen one of
family.
those
It's
since what's
fine.
his name? Paul Walker was alive. I
And
don't.
that's a smart choice. But they're about family. It's fine.
Are
But
they?
I yeah, yeah,
What's up
yes.
with?
Well,
Ask the Rock
yes.
ask the Rock what these movies are about.
Well, and he said family until
He
things
said
got in the
family
way, and
capital
now he's
F,
like
capital
a
U.
check. Well, exactly. Well, exactly. Well, exactly. But I say all of this to say that Mission Impossible, the last one, the first hour and some change, very slow. Just a recap of all the previous movies. The last hour and some change, incredible action movie making. So shout out to that. But I do, yes, you're right. It is mostly nostalgia content, rehash IP, and endless sequels. I think that they're all sort of treated differently. The endless sequels and the rehashed IP. Well, okay, all three of them are things that studios for a long time thought were guaranteed to make money, right?
Mhm.
I think for different reasons. Rehashed IP for a, and I, Disney is probably the biggest person we talk about when we talk about
We've
this.
got a we've got
Um,
a Lilo and Stitch movie out at the same time as a Mission Impossible movie, and what year is it?
Exactly, exactly. And the rehashed IP of it all, especially in Disney's case, a part of it is IP recertification or copyright, whatever. A part of it is just an easy cash grab. But they are coming to find out that those easy cash grabs, if Snow White was any proof, are not actually as easy anymore as they used to be because
I'm
people are
sorry, but
now
they
a
made
lot more.
one good live action Disney princess movie, and it was Cinderella, and they should have stopped.
Yeah, I didn't even love that one. It was fine. It was fine. But you're right. That one was fine. The rest of them were bad. And
Yes. What
and
the fuck
Snow
was
White,
Mulan? What was that?
here's the
Why
thing.
is it wizards now? What
They
even
tried
was
to make
that?
it they tried to make it more historically accurate to the actual tale of Mulan. But the thing is,
That
that's
listen, I
for
saw that
ID.
movie when
That's
it was
for the
called
History Channel.
Xena. I saw that movie when it was called that one episode of Xena where she goes to like something that is
Yes.
China but we don't call China, and then
China,
suddenly she's
yes.
crouching tiger, hidden dragoning, and like it's the episode with the silk, and she's
Yep.
throwing silk
Yep.
with her mind.
Exactly.
That's I saw that. I
You're
saw
like, I
the
saw this already.
Mulan
Yeah.
when it was Xena.
Right. And I understand this idea that okay, if we're going to give the children a new version of this, then we must give it to them in a way that feels more appropriate to the time. But first of all, you don't need to give us a new version. Just re-release the original version in theaters. It costs you no money and you would make so much money back. But also, they're never good because I feel as though Disney just doesn't understand the things that made them magical in the first place. And in changing some things, it's not going to matter. For example, Halle Bailey was an incredible Ariel in a movie that I think overall was like just mid. She was phenomenal, right? Like there are certain changes that are going to be fine. There are other changes that
Her
just don't
part of
make
your
any
world
sense.
like
Her part of
that,
your world
with the what was it, the
gave
key
me
change or the whatever,
chills.
like god
Yes.
dang
When
it,
she
man.
modulated, that gave me chills.
Woo-wee. That
She
live
was
version that she did at the Disney park, I play that on repeat. It was so good. And
she's
her
so
talent
good.
deserved so much
So much better. But the movie overall was mid. She deserved better. And I think that they don't have that special sauce, right? Like
better.
they don't understand the special sauce that the original movies had. And audiences are starting to react to this. Snow White absolutely bombed at the box office, so much so that Disney is actually halting production on the only live action that I thought that would be good, which is Tangled. That was the only one that I was like, actually, I feel like you can nail that. You could nail Tangled. I feel like they'd cast it well. There's nothing you really need to change because it's already actually a very sort of feminist story.
Mhm.
No one's going to make her black. It's like I feel like that one actually would have been incredible. And that is the one that they're halting production on because Snow White bombed at the box office. So I feel a sort of thorn in my side about that. However, I do think it's a net good that Disney is starting to think twice about just churning out these rehashed IP films that get so far away from the original beauty. Why are we making a Lion King movie with
I
photorealistic
still don't
lions that
understand.
don't
Yeah,
emote?
I'm like, okay, one, how are we calling this live action? Two, if we're just doing an animated Lion King shot for shot remake, why don't you
Why
just
do
show your
it?
kid Lion King?
Why
It
do it?
exists.
And also, photorealistic lions don't emote. This is a
No,
movie for children. How are they supposed to know the lion is sad if the lion is just looks like a lion? I don't understand where we as a culture, how we got here. And I say that as someone who loves Jon Favreau, so I will have to move
I
on
love
because I
Jon
won't
Favreau.
tarnish his
Like
name,
Chef
but
is great, but
it's
like
incredible.
Chef
The
is great,
first
but
Iron
like
Man?
sure, but like I do think sometimes when media changes form, it
Yeah.
loses the magic of what made the form great. Like there are some things that can only be accomplished in animation. Like I've recently
Yes.
gotten my husband into anime. It was a slow slide
With
into
what?
anime.
With what anime?
Okay, so his very first introduction was Yuri on Ice, and he was like,
Okay.
"Wait, this is a really good story. I didn't know
Well,
we were doing
yes.
gay ice skaters." I was
Well,
like, "Yeah, we're
yes.
doing gay ice skaters," and they're kind of engaged, kind of with as much as we're legally allowed to say that
Say.
in the country
Right.
in which this is from. Um, but now we've gotten into like oh god, he's like, when's the next season of Castlevania coming? When's the next
Oh, I
season of
love.
like of oh well, Castlevania Nocturne especially we are
Okay.
quite obsessed with, but like a ton of other stuff as well. And we were watching Solo Leveling
Oh, I
and
haven't seen.
Solo Leveling, Freerin, some of the stuff that's come out in the last year is just
Good.
incredible.
Okay.
And it's like, oh, this would not have worked in live action because there are some things that you could really only do in this form
Yeah.
and do well.
And the
Yeah,
masters of animation know this,
yeah.
right? Like you're never, if anyone ever tried to turn a Miyazaki movie into a live action movie, I think
And
there would
that
be
they are a perfect example of what you're talking about because those get re-released in theaters all the time.
all the time. All the time.
And
And
theaters
if
love it because they'll go. And you know who shows up every single time, even though I own all of them?
me,
I will go. Do you
it's
know
me.
Porco Rosso on a big screen? That is my
So
favorite Ghibli movie. My favorite Ghibli movie. And it didn't used to be. And then I saw it on a big screen and I was like, I'm seeing like this Mediterranean seascape.
yeah,
I'm like, oh my God.
that one's so good.
It's
Howl's
so
Moving
good.
Castle was a sexual awakening for me. I really
You and your
I
twinks.
really, me and my twinks, me and
when the
my
when
fairy like
listen,
twinks.
as a blonde, well, I'm too old now, but listen, if something screwed up with my hair, I would also summon the forces of
And that
darkness.
crash out was so valid. That crash out
Valid.
was valid.
Yeah.
Yeah, if anyone tried to turn those movies, those incredible pieces of film, classic movies, into live action, there would be riots in the street. And I would be someone with a pitchfork because they just wouldn't translate. You know, you're absolutely right about that. Like there are different formats and mediums allow you to do different things. There's a reason why you make a movie that is Hamlet, but for children with lions as animation, because they need to be sad. They need to be sad. And
Yes.
they can't be sad when they're photorealistic lions because that's not how we as humans process emotion. We don't know what a sad lion sounds like because we're not lions. We don't understand. We don't
and
get that.
and we need that little homosexual bird. I need
We do,
Zazu.
we
And
need Zazu.
you just don't get Zazu and all of his Zazu with in
Exactly.
live action
Exactly.
or
And
in photorealistic animation.
you need a Scar that isn't purely evil, but like evil and sultry, you know, like you
Yes.
need that James Iron, like you
Yeah.
can't get that in just as much as I believe it was Chiwetel, maybe as much as I love Chiwetel, like you don't get that in just a growly aggressive
Right.
evil
Right.
portrayal, right? And so yeah, so there's the rehashed IP, the sequels for a
My
long
thing, and we're
time.
seeing this in publishing too, where
Yes
we
we
are
are.
seeing a lot of people say, "Oh, the Hunger Games worked. I wish I had written the Hunger Games.
Right.
I'm gonna just
Right. The Hunger Games again.
gently scrub the serial numbers off the Hunger Games and stick my name on the cover."
Yep.
And suddenly a publisher's picking it up and it's a huge deal. And, there's a
Yeah.
huge, and we have 3 different Dramione fan fictions coming out this
Coming out.
summer
Yeah.
from traditional publishers that,
And
like, one,
one
are
of them,
rocking the publishing world in like, is this even legal? But two, it's giving people who on the surface said, oh no, we're not going to engage with this problematic IP, permission to just re-engage with problematic
dramatic
IP
IP.
and
Yeah.
problematic people.
Yeah.
Because,
Change
oh
a few
well,
names and that will be turned into a movie series as well. Like
girl,
people
$5 million book deal for
people
freaking
don't
Manacled.
understand that almost every sort of like YA or romance series we see is actually just based off of fan fiction of like a more popular classic series that we have
I mean,
already read.
we've. It's not that we've lost original stuff. It's that publishers are also doing that thing that film studios are doing, and they're like, we want
Yes.
the sure thing. We want
Yes.
the sure thing. It isn't that original stories aren't coming out. It's that where they're putting their money and marketing dollars are behind stuff that fits into pre-existing IP, but that we can
That they
legally get
feel
away
is a
with it
safe
because we
investment.
correct.
Yeah.
And that's who's getting those big advances. That's who's getting all those marketing dollars. And the problem is that money typically goes to a certain kind of person. So only certain
Yes.
kinds of people continue to, all yada, yada, yada. But I feel the problem with all of this is that I fear that we are starting to lose what makes storytelling such a human thing for us to connect with one another.
Gosh.
Because instead of hearing a story and then getting inspired and saying, okay, what is this story doing that I like? And what new thing could I do that gives me that feeling, but that is a yes and? Okay, I watched Kiki's Delivery Service and I
Not
really
enough
loved
of us
it.
went to improv classes as children. Not enough of us were theater kids.
Listen.
We weren't yes-anding.
But not enough people are saying, okay, I like this, but what is my version of this? Not
Absolutely.
what if I had written this? It's
right.
what thing could I do that gives a similar thing? And I fear that we are starting to lose that because we just kind of want to rehash what is just coming out in like the last 5 years. Not even like, oh, what came out 30 years ago. It's what was hot 5 years ago. How can I make that but put my name on it?
Yeah, and I also think a big part of that that's happening to all industries is that it's also shortening the production timeline. So now it's like before you could have taken half your life to write the next great American novel or whatever, and now people are like, we want that in 6 months. Like give it to us in a year.
Got to jump on the trope. Got to jump on the trend. And it's in all media, and it's all suffering from it.
Yes. But
we can't possibly edit these things in media. We can't, the graphics departments are overworked and underpaid, and it's churning out slop in publishing. And everybody's turning to AI. Everybody in all forms of everybody's turning to AI for shortcuts.
Turning to AI.
There was a recent BookBub poll that said that 45% of authors, 45% of authors are using ChatGPT in some part of their writing process, and another 7% are interested in doing so. And
here I am talking to people.
And the number one use case for using ChatGPT was research. The number one use case was research.
This is going to turn me into the Joker.
As a so I write poetry, fiction, and nonfiction. I have a nonfiction book coming out in November. Baby, I didn't spend all these years getting good at research and following up on sources and interviewing people.
Right. And but the thing
ChatGPT hallucinates things. It'll just lie to you. It's a people-pleasing large language model.
It lies often. And the thing that sort of really upsets me about this is I am not currently writing a book, but it is one of my long-term goals. I would love to write a book. But
if I can do it, you can do it. It's easy.
Okay. Well, from your mouth
I'm not
to God's
good at
ears,
it.
baby.
I've done it 5 times.
Well, you know what? And that's the push I needed. Let's be mediocre together.
There you go.
Love it.
As a mediocre white man, let me tell you, you are already better than I am.
No. But I know many writers as a journalist. Almost every journalist has also written a book, and they will tell you, or you just understand, even from just reading an acknowledgements page, right? That a part of the research is not just knowing what happened or the context in which something happened. It's also talking to the people who were there or who it happened to, or talking to the people who have been studying this thing for their entire lives or who have lived in that town, right? Or whose grandparents lived in that town. And that's human connection. You're not getting around like you're yeah, it's just like it's a way to research, but it's also a way to connect with other people, and that in turn makes the color in your story and your understanding of the world that you're building so much richer, even if that world is literally our world but 20 years ago or whatever, right? It's such an integral part of the process, not only because you have to know if this is how being a fisherman worked in the 1940s, but also because you need to know what they talked like. You need to know what their sort of attitudes were, what their vibe was like, what set the scene. Literally, it will set the scene for you. It's kind of easier to talk to a real person to help write than it is to talk to ChatGPT, who will just say, oh, well, these people were here from this year to this year. Honestly, I wouldn't know what ChatGPT would say because I've actually never logged into it, which is at a certain point a journalistic miss. I probably should have, just to be like, what is this thing that's going to try and steal my job? But like,
well, I think a lot of people, I mean, I think a lot of people did, like in that like November, December, January, like that
yeah,
early period of 2022 when it
22.
just came out. Everybody was like, oh, what is that? Oh, this is a cute, fun tool. Oh, it's a robot. It's a da 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 da. And then like by March of that following year, it was like, guys, you are never going to believe how this was made. And it's like,
Yeah,
oh no, this is bad. I think I had it
very
roast
bad.
me, my social media. Like there was some trend or something. And I was like,
Yes.
yeah, I'll roast my social media. And then it was like, oh no, oh wait, what is
And then it's like,
this?
oh, I'm
Oh
teaching it. Yeah,
no,
yeah,
shut this
yeah,
down, become the largest
yeah,
anti-AI advocate on the planet. Like, oh yikes, this is
yeah.
bad.
It's
This is so
scary.
bad.
It's scary. And I think about that with
Also, it
industry. I think
stole
about
my
this.
book. It stole my books to train it, and
And
I'm waiting on a check from Mark Zuckerberg
it
that I'm never going to
famously
get.
do be doing that. It do be stealing the written word. I'm sure that some of the articles I've written with my own voice and my little quippy whatevers have been plugged and chugged up in that bitch like you wouldn't believe.
It stole
And yet,
so many scientific journals, like so many, like all of them. Like,
and
for
then
what?
synthesizes
Why?
them improperly, right?
Yeah.
It's like stealing it just to synthesize it improperly, and sure, maybe it will get better, but it takes the
Hmm.
human heart out of the things that we're doing. However, to not be entirely doomer about it, I do think that there are many ways in which our cultural media landscape, whether it's publishing, film, music, whatever, is changing uh because of because of companies only wanting to get like a quick buck, or because of AI or whatever. But then I also think that there are people who are, I don't know, I think that people are hungry for real art, and I think that they're really starting to try to be more discerning about real art, about original stories, about these kinds of things. And so that does give me a little bit of hope. And I think that actually sequels these days, like there was a period where sequels 4 through 6 or whatever would be some of the worst, like rehashed slop you've ever seen. But John Wick 4 or 5 or 6, whichever one it was, the most recent one, was an incredible movie
I
and
just
was
watched the first one
hailed.
for the first time last night.
I
That
do love the
dog.
first one. I know. Well, and this is why it works.
I'm
This is
so
why it
upset.
works. And this is why it circumvented the norm, because usually those stories are about just a woman, right? Just a
Yeah.
wife.
Yeah.
But when you hurt a man's dog, then we're going to have
That poor
problems, right? That was
puppy.
the
And I
novelty
just
of
got a
it.
new puppy. So I was like holding the puppy and like, get
Oh,
him,
congrats on
John.
your new pup. No, but
Yeah.
exactly,
Get him,
exactly.
John.
And yeah, so now I think even auteur filmmakers are they're trying to make these sequels into something. Like there's a reason why the current and final Mission Impossible is 3 hours long, because yes, the first hour and some change is just recap of all the previous, but the last hour and some change is just as good as the ninth one, the previous one, which was incredible. The first one I've ever seen. And so now, yeah, you have people are trying to reinvigorate sequels now for these massive franchises in a way that I really, really appreciate, right? And I do think a lot more auteur filmmakers are trying to get their skin in the game. It doesn't always work, but sometimes it actually does pay off. And so sequels are sort of a watch this space, I think, now. They're trying to make them good. And for that, I am eternally grateful because I don't know that we'll ever be entirely rid of them. But the one of the three that you mentioned in terms of rehashed IP, nostalgia, and sequels, the one I have the most affinity for is nostalgia. Partially because I am nostalgic, but
Mhm.
also because I think as times get harder and as original stories become rarer, nostalgia is kind of like the salve. It's the only salve we have, right? We go back to When Harry Met Sally because When Harry Met Sally is incredible. And we re-release original movies that we loved in theaters like Interstellar or whatever because they were incredible. And they are sure bets, and we know how they'll make us feel. We know that the quality was good. We know that they're original, and they take us back to a specific time where we don't have to think about our democracy crumbling or the 15th like new Avengers movie, and that's fine, right? And so I do. Nostalgia is kind of my own little. I'm like, I will actually stick up for nostalgia content, but it does, like everything, it gets to a point. Like it does get to a point where when you're seeing people try to recreate When Harry Met Sally for the 15th time, and you're like, it's
See, I
babes,
think
it's not
my
possible.
issue with nostalgia is instead of either re-releasing the thing that was already great, because it's like,
Yeah.
oh God, I wish, I wish something would make me feel the way that Harry Met Sally when Harry Met Sally made me feel. Guess what? I have very good news for you. That still exists.
Exactly.
It still exists, and we could just re-release it
Exactly.
and watch
We
that.
we
But
could
I
just
think my
re-release it.
problem is with nostalgia is we just keep remaking the same like dozen or so films or the same
Yeah.
dozen or so TV shows. Like one of my favorite things that came out in the last year was Fall Guy, which is a
Yeah.
celebration of the
Yes.
stunt crew and the stunt folks on movies, and that's great. That's rehashed IP. That's a
It is.
remake, and
Yeah.
it's yet another one. We've got Matlock back on the air, and like
Oh, but I love Kathy
who
Bates.
doesn't love a Kathy Bates? Who
Don't
doesn't?
come for
And
me
I
with
love that we're
this.
taking a new thing. My thing is there's a lot of stuff that is from like that is from our childhood or that is from that time when we felt innocent that we haven't made, we haven't adapted yet. That why don't we do that?
Right.
Like, the Lost
Yeah.
Years of Merlin, where's that live action? Let's
Yeah.
or something, like let's go find what else was out there or what else is like that and make that and adapt that and just make really good stuff. I think the problem is that when we try that, nobody wants to buy it because it's not we haven't already proven that it can succeed.
Work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, until someone does,
Sure.
until Ryan Coogler makes Sinners, which is
But what
it's
I
a
hate about
genre
that is now the only conversation around Sinners is where is Sinners 2? What is the franchise? What are the spin-offs of
which and I'm
Sinners?
and I'm very happy that he squashed that. That he was
Yeah.
like, I've worked in the franchise business for so long, it's not happening, right? But I still think on its head, like he had to fight for that movie to
Yeah.
exist. Reportedly, he's said this so many times, and of course he did. That movie is a stealth musical. It's a stealth comedy. It is for the first hour or so, it is just like a family drama,
Uh-huh.
and then for the last hour, it turns into a vampire movie, and it's like all of these. It's an action film. It's not an action film. It's kind of a romance. It's like all of these things
Mm-hmm.
that you wouldn't think could exist in one movie, but do. It's a racial allegory on
Mm-hmm.
top of all of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a movie that just like seems impossible, but he had a vision. He got to make it after fighting for it, fighting for a studio to fund it, and then for him to be able to own it after a certain number of years. And it's like, those things are thankfully still happening. But you're right. It's we've been conditioned to, oh God, and this gets me more in television than anywhere else actually. But we've been conditioned to think about what's next or what's coming. And there's no reason why, after making a perfect season of television like Shogun, we now have to think about what Shogun season 2, which shouldn't exist because of the way Shogun season 1 ended, what that is going to be. Like there's no reason. But of course, because it was popular, because it made the money, and because it won a shit ton of awards, right? And of course it did, because it's incredible. But we've gotten so far away from this idea of just letting original things stand on their own.
Big Little Lies, I think, had the same
God,
problem,
yeah, it
where it was
did.
like, bring back the miniseries, which I fear is now a perfect dovetail into us talking about a shared love
Yes.
of those early, like those late 90s, early 2000s, that period of
Yeah.
time where when we did feel like we had more of a monoculture, maybe when we really
Yeah.
all were still, a lot of us were watching TV on an antenna and could only get like 4 channels. Hi. We did have these miniseries that were big swings. They were expensive, even though now they kind of look like they were made on a little stage with some
Yeah.
Microsoft Paint for CGI. But we did have a period of time where we invested in miniseries and we didn't turn them into anything else. It was just a moment where everybody sat down once a week to watch a show. One of the ones that you and I love was The 10th Kingdom, which I
Yes.
think, I think that The 10th Kingdom walked so that Once Upon a Time could crawl
Oh,
for 3 seasons and then die a
yeah.
death.
Yes. There's a reason why I started
But
off
we
as a
had a bunch
huge
of it.
Once
There
Upon
was
a Time
The
fan.
Odyssey was a great
Yeah, there
one.
was the Odyssey.
The
There was
Merlin.
Grimm, which was one of my favorites.
Wait, Grimm?
Oh, Grimm. Okay, Grimm
Wait, I
was,
know
I
the
believe.
TV show.
Yes, that's what I mean. That's what I
Oh,
mean. The
okay.
TV
I thought we were
show.
talking
As
about
in,
miniseries
like,
still.
no. I'm saying as in all of the fantasy shows
Yes.
that came out
Yes.
after.
Yeah.
Grimm was one of my favorites. But no, I agree. I do think that The 10th Kingdom, and I'm someone who saw it late. I did not see it when it originally came out. I saw it for the first
I was
time,
there week by week watching it as a
and
baby.
I love that for you.
Love
I
it.
wish I saw it for the first time maybe 2 years ago, and I was like, oh
What?
yeah,
And you
the
liked
story.
it?
Yes, it's incredible. Okay, so this is how it happened.
Like, how
My
do you?
best friend.
I gotta say, listen, I am very forgiving of
Oh
old fantasy stuff, but I fear so many people are like so used to what fantasy and science fiction looks like now
no!
that
Oh my
they'd be
god!
very unforgiving of something that came out in, like, was it 99 or 2000?
It's so The Labyrinth coded, and The
Yeah.
Labyrinth is one of my all-time favorite movies. Like, I watched The Labyrinth as a kid. I love that movie so much.
See,
I
I
watched
did
Labyrinth.
see, and this is why I think that, because I did not watch Labyrinth as a kid. I watched Labyrinth as an adult, and I don't like
I
Labyrinth. I am so
and
sorry.
it's
That's my
okay.
hot take. I don't like it.
And I think that that's an incredibly fine hot take. The movie, not great.
Not
Very
great.
much of a time. Very much of a time. It also is very questionable in its plot.
I'm
It
like,
is
sorry.
not,
I'm sorry. What is this plot, and why are we
it
all
is
okay with it? And
it is
what are the
not about
Firebirds doing here?
it is not about a good man, and he does not do good things. You know, like it's very much about a goblin king who like kidnaps a child.
Yeah.
It's very very not great. However,
I'm like,
it
where are
is
the age gap girlies? Like, where?
It's-
Why are we not? Why are we?
they saw David Bowie in that fit and they said, "Ooh, age gap where? Age gap where?" I no, it's very of a time, and it's very of a specific like vibe or genre, and to me The 10th Kingdom is in that same ilk of like it's a lot of puppets, it's
Sure.
puppet-esque,
Yeah.
and it's really cheesy, but it also hits you in your heart in a specific way. And I think growing up and having watched movies like Labyrinth or anything Jim Henson was involved in, and then watching The 10th Kingdom, just felt like, oh, I know exactly where to place this in culture, right? Like it didn't feel cheesy to me in a foreign way. It felt cheesy to me in a very home nostalgic way that's like, oh, this is just like the other movies I grew up with that I loved. But I did watch it only a few years ago because my best friend came to visit me in New York, and we were sitting on this very couch, this very cheap couch, and they were like, wow, you know what my favorite thing to do is when I'm high? Watch The 10th Kingdom. And I said, girl, what is that? And she said, oh, well, I was in my parents' basement and I was looking through their, DVDs, and I was like, hey, what is this DVD set? What is this? And it was The 10th Kingdom. And since then, she had been watching it in like 15-minute increments when she was high. at 15 minutes, because when you're high, I don't know if you've seen it after you've taken a little gummy or smoked a little bit. If that's
My
your
mother
if
listens to this show, so I don't even know
and
what you're talking about.
and you know what? I I'm Jamaican. That's my excuse. But if
But
you
after a long, hard day of
after a
gardening,
after a long hard day of gardening, you get your special
sometimes after
tea.
one gardens, you put
You
on
get
the
your
10th
special
Kingdom.
yes. You get your
Have you
special
ever
tea
gone
and you
down
put on the
the
10th
rabbit
Kingdom.
hole of all of the sequels of the 10th Kingdom that never got made?
I've went down some of them, not all of them, but
Like
yes, for my
Wolfie, I think
piece
there
for
was supposed to be like
Slate.
a there was
Yes,
supposed to be the
yes.
Wolfie spinoff, and I think there
And
was like a
in
novel
in
that
a
was supposed to
in a
happen. And
cameo video of all things, Scott Cohen has said about a year ago that like they were in talks, and I think they're always kind of just perennially in talks. But it's
I'll
he
write it.
someone
I'll be in that writer's room. I can write.
and and I will be an extra. I will be a troll. I feel like I could kill it as a
I
troll.
look like an
Honestly,
elf. I could be an elf.
I could be something. Someone put me in the writer's room and then put me on screen. Okay.
Yes.
I'm trying to get my SAG card. But you know what? It's no. So she had been watching it in like minute increments. And yeah, we just, after a long day of gardening, we were like, you know what? I want to try this. And so we watched it. I was like, this is one of the most hilarious things I've ever seen in my entire life.
It's so
Truly
good.
an incredible experience after a long day of
Those
gardening.
trolls in
But
those
then I was
shoes.
like, I mean,
The shoes.
just the concept of like the 10th Kingdom, of them arriving in New York City, being like, what is this? This must be the 10th Kingdom alone, sold me. But yeah, and then I was like, well, what is the show like after you haven't been gardening on just a regular day?
Yeah.
And I loved it in a different way, but still loved it all the same.
Yeah.
And I started to research more about it, and I saw all of these sort of old articles about how important of a show it was, how big of a deal it was that it got made, you know, how much money and resources and time had gone into making that show, and also why they made it, which is, again, kind of like we were saying, at the time, Hallmark studios and, you know, networks were teaming together to make consistently these like epic fairy tale like mini series that they would make every year, whether it was Gulliver's Travels or, you know, something like that. And they were
Sam
massively
Neill
successful.
and the Merlin one, and we had the Odyssey. God, I still think about the Odyssey and the Cyclops and all. And oh God, what's her name? That play. Oh God, wasn't was Vanessa Williams? Was she in that as wasn't she a sea nymph in that?
Was
random,
she?
Or was she Cersei?
Sorry,
Am I hallucinating? Hold on.
I
Hold
hope
on.
not.
You talk.
Because I'm gonna
Google something.
I'm gonna
This is
rewatch
gonna make
that.
great podcasting.
I'm gonna rewatch that so quickly if you tell me that she was. But yeah, so it was such a huge deal, and it was also, it fit into a pattern that studios found to be successful at the time. And so in researching about that, I just got so interested in the show because it was a huge deal. There was so much fanfare about it. It had at the time such a kind of star-studded cast, and it was the precursor, I felt, to all of these different extremely popular fairy tale TV shows that we now know that are household names, but no one knew what the hell I was talking about when I would bring up the 10th Kingdom. And so I was like, well, it was popular when it
Vanessa
came
Williams
out.
was Calypso in the Odyssey in 1997, and Bernadette Peters was Cersei.
Shut up, stop. Okay, well, I know exactly what I'm doing for these next few
Isabella
weeks.
Rossellini was Athena. Like, this cast, man. Armand Asante was obviously Odysseus, but like, girly pop. This cast is
and it was also NBC.
Yeah.
NBC, Hallmark. Yeah, they really.
Girly pop.
Wow.
This cast,
can we find this anywhere? Let's do a recap pod.
I will. Wait.
Let's do a recap pod.
I will 100. If Slate wants to
serious.
do, like, let's rewatch all these miniseries. Let's do this.
I agree. I agree. I don't think Slate will pay for us to do it, but I think you and I should do it.
We should do it. There we go.
It's done.
I'm in.
It's done. Besties. Wow. But yeah, no. So I I found out about the 10th Kingdom recently,
Yeah.
and fell in love with it in a very specific way, but also was much more intrigued, as I always am. This is just kind of like the annoying worm that's in my brain at all times, which is, where is this thing in culture? Is it massively popular? If so, why? And if it's not, why? Right? Like,
But see,
I'm
what I
so
love about what
interested.
you do, because I think a lot of people set themselves up, or they call themselves a culture journalist. They say that they are commenting on culture, and we get this on social media where somebody gets a little bit of a following, sometimes by accident, and now thinks that they're a movie critic, or they think that they're
Yeah.
a literature critic. And I'm not trying to like gatekeep that word, but like a real critic or a real journal, like somebody who's really writing about culture like that, their job isn't to tell you whether they personally liked or disliked something. The job of the critic is to put it in context, is
Yeah.
to put whatever it is, to contend with the work before them in the context in which it was created. Whether that critic personally just liked it or disliked it is secondary or tertiary or not relevant at all to the conversation, because from what I understand from talking to critics and other culture writers and stuff, it's more about, what is this saying? What piece of this
Right.
conversation is this saying? And how successful is it? Even when I'm talking about work on social media, I'm really careful to try to say to leave out whether I liked it or disliked it, and talk about whether or not I think it's successful writing. And successful work, I've always
Yeah.
said, is the author, and the author is knows why they wrote the thing, and the reader knows why the thing was written, and there is some level of conversation happening on the page between author and writer, and that loop is made. That is successful work for me. For me, my personal definition, I think that is successful work. Whether you like the conversation that happened, whether it made you
Yep.
feel good after it, that's a whole separate thing.
And you
Was
know what
this
we
a
call that,
successful
folks?
work?
Constructive criticism.
And that's why I'm a writer
That's
and you are not. Not you, them.
No, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I've been in too many fiction writing workshops in my youth, in my degree obtaining youth, to not know. But that's constructive criticism, guys. That's
Yeah.
what we're talking about.
That's
And
that
yeah,
is that's the job of the critic, is to put it in is to contextualize the work.
I I just think that that makes for more interesting
Yeah.
criticism, because
Yeah.
I personally don't care. Like, not to say that I don't care whether or not someone likes or dislikes something, but I don't care whether or not someone likes or dislikes something
I
that
could
I like or
dislike something
dislike.
because I had a bad lunch, and I
Exactly,
walked into the
exactly.
theater in a shitty mood.
For
Like,
me,
my
it's
first
more
impression just might be
about
negative just because I'm in a pissy mood.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And for me, it's more about the context of your criticism and the
Mhm.
context in which you place the work, right? Because you can say that you didn't like something, that's fine. But for example, there's been a lot of pushback against Past Lives, right? The movie Past Lives, which I love. I love
I
that
haven't seen it
movie
yet.
as, and it's what?
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. I don't know how you feel about romances more generally. I'm assuming positive.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Oh,
but
this has been on my list. Oh, and I
it's
love her. I love Greta Lee.
I love Greta Lee, and I think that that movie is stunningly beautiful as a depiction of love. However, it got a lot of pushback from a very small but like very vocal community about how that movie fails as a depiction of the sort of Asian American diaspora, right?
Mm.
And like, I can't speak to that. That's why the context of that criticism is incredibly important, because I can love that movie as a tale of romance, but I'm not going to understand the ways that that movie is successful or isn't successful in showcasing Korean culture, right? Like that's just
I'll give you an example from my life, and you can feel fully empowered to have an opinion on this, because it's Pride Month, and I'm so gay, and I'm giving you the permission.
yes.
The Birdcage. The
Mhm.
older I get, the more I dislike that movie. It the
And I think that
older I
that's
get,
fine.
and the more I start I get into the age group that these people were, or maybe I'm past it now.
Yeah.
I don't know. But the more I'm like, oh, it means some. I'm angry. This makes me mad. I don't like
Yeah.
this. This upsets me. These are this. What happens to this couple in this movie is not great. It's bad. Why are
Yeah,
we laughing at
it's
this?
bad.
Yeah.
It's bad. And
It's
I think that we reserve the right to like or dislike things for whatever reason. But I think that what makes actually interesting criticism is a solid explanation of why that involves both the context of your criticism and also the context in which the thing was made or in which you are encountering the thing. And for me, like the 10th Kingdom, one of the things that is so magical about it is that it is so pre 9/11. Like it is full of a hopium that could only exist in a world where the twin towers were still up,
yeah.
right? Like our
When country
world.
music was still about like F the police.
Absolutely.
Do the children remember
They don't.
when country music was about like prostitutes getting one over on rich men or
They
like
don't.
baby like the night when the lights went out in Georgia? You know what that's about? Like come on baby, like
They don't
what
know.
Dolly Parton Appalachian country music used to be about sitting with a rifle on your front porch daring the lawman to come up and like
This is
baby
why I
you don't
love
want to come up
her.
in these hills and hollers. We get you.
I mean, she's like originally like a folk bluegrass singer. Like people don't know, they don't know their history, and it's
No, I'm
fine.
like,
It's whatever. I guess it's a
y'all
part
don't
of my
know
job to teach
Willie
them.
Nelson, and you know, listen, y'all want to know? Go listen to Cowboy Carter.
I was just
She
about to say yes.
reintroduces
And
what country
there
music
is a
was pre
reason
9/11.
and there is a reason why she chose those specific artists, not just because of their tentpole fame,
Mm-hmm.
but because of their origins, like you said. And also, I did see that tour last weekend, and she
I did
is
too. I went. I
she's my
was
everything.
way in the back. I was
So was
so
I. I was all the way up high,
I
way in the
was,
back, and I was like,
you know, which
getting my
honestly,
life.
like honestly, that's just, you know, I just, it's so sweet of her to let me sit in the back so that I was not bombarded by
Right.
fans. I mean,
Right. Because it would have
obviously,
been too much. I
it
would
just
have
would have been
passed
too
away.
much. Yeah, I
It
don't
would have
want
been
to.
too
I don't want to
much.
upstage. God, she can. Okay, I don't. We're not supposed to comment on people, but like, she looks so good.
She I want my
How?
entire life.
How do you look?
And I
How?
and I understand. I
If it's
understand that
work,
I'm
it's
a
incredible
baby.
work. But I think it's just. I think she's. I think
I
she's
think
just
she's
a
just
force
like
of
that.
nature.
I think she's just like that. I
God
agree.
dang it.
I really like, and I know I'm a baby. I know I'm a baby.
Yeah.
But my whole life, she has just
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
so stunning.
And
And
she works harder than anyone else on the face of the planet, man. One of the
she works
hardest
harder
working
than
human
me.
beings on earth.
She works harder than every landlord and
Yeah.
broker in New York
I'm
City.
like, oh,
She works
dude.
harder than every exterminator in New York City.
Yeah.
She
I'm
works
like,
harder than
you know,
what is
I
with me
want
in
this,
the
but
urban
do I
farmers?
want it as much as Beyonce wants? Like,
Wants it. Right. Right. And you know what? Sometimes I do. And that was me pitching my 10th Kingdom piece because I had to pitch that piece twice.
really?
But yeah. I think the first time, the thing that I completely, absolutely understand is that people hate an anniversary peg. And when I say people, I mean journalists hate
Uh-huh.
an anniversary peg because it's just lazy. It's easy. Right. But what could I do about having been introduced to something a year before its actual anniversary? Like it just kind of felt serendipitous, and
Uh-huh.
so I had to pitch it twice. But on the second time
And you called it
around,
bad. No, wait, your headline writer called it bad. Or whoever's on your social media team called it bad.
someone called it bad. We need not name names. 'Twas not me. But I don't. But the TikTok beef that we had, the low grade TikTok beef that we had, that
It
has
wasn't
now
about your
cemented.
article. It was about whoever wrote
No, I
that
know
headline.
that now has cemented such a strong bond that we've now birthed many other projects together just on this one
Apparently,
podcast
we are
call
going to be
alone.
working together for years. Apparently,
For years.
congrats.
And you know what?
Yay.
I'm very much looking forward to our future together. I feel adopted, and this has been lovely. Um, shout out to my mother. Yeah, I think that it is. So my big sort of point in the TikTok that I made in response to your very lovely TikTok, which I found to be so endearing because it's rare that anyone sees my work and specifically points it out with such a large platform. And so many people had sent it to me. They were like,
Really?
wait. Yeah, they were like, you wrote this. And I was like, I did. And then I was like, I think I'm going to respond.
You should. I'm
And
so glad.
and I did, and it was fun, and now we're here.
Yeah.
But yeah, my whole point in my response was that I actually think that calling things bad is fine because I think that, like, I think that what makes the world go round culturally is not just prestige things. It is also our quote unquote guilty pleasures. I just think that we need not be guilty about them, right? Like, because they are our pleasures. And I think like lowbrow, I hate the terms, but lowbrow culture or whatever is just as important, if not more important, because it's probably watched by more people than highbrow culture, right? Pop culture to me is more important culturally because it reaches more people and is designed to reach more
And
people
I think people forget
than,
that is like it is meant to be broad. It is meant to be all
yes,
encompassing, which means your
yes,
peaks are probably not going to be as high and your valleys are probably not going to be as low because not as many people want to go with you
yes.
on some of those journeys sometimes.
Right. And like I think that those things have such an important place in culture. However, I do think it's important for us to not lie about what those things are, right? Like I'm never going to say that a Disney Channel original movie is just as good as I don't know, like some massive really great rom-com. Like, right, I'm never going to say that like a Disney Channel original movie is as good as When Harry Met Sally because both of them are extremely important to me,
Hmm.
right? Like I'm just never going to say that. They're not the same thing quality-wise. The script of one is much better than the script of the other, and that's just the truth. However, are they both incredibly important in culture and to me personally? Yes, right? But I think in understanding their differences and in understanding like where they fall, there's a lot to be learned there.
Hmm.
And so I think it's fine to call something bad quality wise, especially if the rest of your article is about how it might be bad, but it was still more important than half the things that are good these days, right? Like I think that that's
Well, especially
that's
because of how
important.
much media came out of it and how much we continue to reference it. Even people that
Exactly.
do not know that they're referencing it are referencing the 10th
Any
Kingdom
anybody who watched Once Upon a Time
can thank the
was
10th Kingdom.
was yes, can thank the 10th Kingdom, and the number of people who watched Once Upon a Time was plenty. That
It's a
show was
lot.
massive.
Yeah.
That show was massive.
Yeah.
And it's like I don't know, it just was so important. It was such a touchstone. It had such a
And
place.
Grimm, I
But I
forgot about
think
Grimm, but we did get into a moment there. And I fear there was something on like a sci-fi channel original that there's
yes,
something there and I'm forgetting what the name is, but I'm starting to get
you are
like
ringing bells.
yeah, the back of my brain is like there was something
Mm.
else that
We were in a
she was bisexual. She's bisexual and she's a succubus and
oh, yes. Wait.
God,
This is
she's a
gonna
bisexual
this
and she's a succubus and there's
this is
a
gonna
and
this
she kisses people and she does and
this is going to
oh
this is
my
going to
God.
upset me so bad if I
Okay.
can't. We need to figure out what this is.
Sci-Fi
You need
Channel
to, okay, you
original.
need to go
I
back
love that these
back to the search.
keywords are sci-fi,
But yeah, I just
succubus, bisexual,
and hey, that's what they call me. They don't
lost
actually. No,
girl.
no one.
That immediately.
Yes. Yes. And you know what? And this is why I love a queen who can Google search with keywords because that's how I do it.
Yes.
If you're typing in what was that show where, then no, you've lost the game already, baby. You've
Yeah.
lost.
Research.
And Chat
This is why I'm a
GPT won't tell
nonfiction
you
author.
that.
Research methods, baby.
And Chat GPT won't teach you that. So,
Degree in social
so
science
what
right
now?
here. Took research methods in school. Thank
So what
you.
now? But yeah, I think that the 10th Kingdom is bad, but I also think it's good. And I don't think I sure in a bad good way, but I also mean that the quality compared to today's quality
Sure.
is not lovely,
But
right? And
also
like,
sometimes I want to go dive into one of those like Technicolor worlds. I was
oh,
seeing somebody that was putting up like a bunch of shots or like of like old movies that had like
yes.
mermaids in them or something. But I was, you know, instead of being underwater, like it's like a stage, but it's
Yeah.
just this gorgeous Technicolor set with just, you know, it's like one of my favorite movies is so bad in quality, but it gives you this like Technicolor. We're on a stage.
Absolutely.
The original Clash of the Titans.
Oh, I haven't seen,
Girly
but I will.
pop. You are in for it.
Okay. I love this.
Personally, I think it's better than any of the remakes, and personally, I think it holds up in that it gives you what you want. Like, again,
Absolutely.
outside of bad or good, outside of, did I like it or dislike it, I
Yes.
think putting it in context for what it's supposed to be, when it was made, all of that, I think it's great. I
And
think it's
in that
good.
way, the 10th
I think Maggie
Kingdom,
Smith is in it. She might.
God, I love her.
Yeah.
Dame for a reason. And in that way, in that very specific way, I think that the 10th Kingdom is phenomenal.
Yeah.
But also, I think a part of my piece, and a part of what I was getting at with the sort of pre 9/11 hopium of it all, is that yes, that was very much of a time, but it's very much of a time that feels so comforting even now while
Mm-hmm.
the world is falling apart, right? Like, we've gotten so far away from the Technicolor, like, beautiful landscape, just a sort of picturesque cinematography that we used to see in television and in film, and now everything is dark. Or if you're in Wicked, like, they try, but even still, it's washed. Ariana Grande throughout that whole movie is washed out. That light is white. They didn't have, and I say that as someone who loves John M. Chu. I
Sure.
love John M. Chu, but that, I was like, now why? Who put the white light? Who put the white LED light on?
I do
Like,
wonder
why?
sometimes if they lit it in a certain way, because there's things that, like, like, people will point to old Transformers movies and say, what happened to the CGI? One, yes, we can talk about rushed production schedules and all of that, but two, certain kinds of, like, CGI in the dark looks
Yeah.
great.
Yes.
Certain kinds of, like, chrome and dark, great. It's going to look good. It's going to look so good. I've wondered when watching Wicked if the lighting was kind of the opposite, like if we're trying to wash out so that you're not really seeing the seams between the CGI and the movie. I've wondered that.
But when they go to the Emerald City, it looks so good. That's the thing. It's like, it's you finally get to the Emerald City, and, like,
did you appreciate the cameos,
alert,
or
I was
were
just
you?
about to say spoiler alert, but then Kristen and Adina pop up, and you're like, okay, like, this is cute.
Yeah,
I did. I screamed. I screamed very loudly. I very much appreciated.
Some people were, like, upset about them, and I thought that was weird. Yeah, some people were upset about the thing. I don't know why.
How
I don't know.
How you gonna be the child but be upset at the mother? That don't make no sense.
I don't know.
That don't make no sense. You
I
wouldn't
don't know.
have the thing that you're watching without them. We need to learn to pay respect. Children these days. I'm kidding.
I need everybody to get off my lawn. Just everybody. Too many people on my lawn.
I stop at, like, original cast slander. I very much stop at Wicked original Broadway cast slander. That will be my 13th
unless
reason.
that slander extends to the original production of Into the Woods. I was in a production of Into the Woods. I will say that show is too long. That should have been a one act, baby.
However,
Though, hey, if we're talking about the 10th Kingdom and Once Upon a Time, I do feel like Into the Woods lives in that conversation.
Yes, absolutely. It's a fractured fairy tale story, and it's one that I love. And I love all of the very long hours of it, because I do think that for most audiences, you need the sort of, like, la di da di da, these are the fairy tales. And then in the second act, you're like, just kidding, everything is screwball. And also, no one's going to write an overture like Sondheim, and no one's going to write, like, that combined intro song where Little Red Riding Hood is like, the light is clear, the light is good, I have no fear, nor no one should. No one's gonna write that like Sondheim.
I'm gonna need somebody on TikTok to put that to a beat. I'm gonna need.
Wow! Yes, yes. Someone turn me into
I hope that goes
EDM
viral.
song. Yeah, but while her withers wither with her, yeah, that Sondheim is cooking fire on the pen in that one. But I do see your point. Like there is the more interesting things do happen in the second act. Like I do absolutely see that. But I do think that, like, we've gotten so far away from that sort of very colorful tapestry of art that we used to have. And there's something so beautiful now, while things are so shitty, to watch a show like The 10th Kingdom, where, like, this is a cultural understanding where nothing so immediately bad has happened. Like, war has happened, but nothing we're not thinking about terrorist attacks or school shootings or things that seem so personal, right? Like very much on our front doorstep. Like this is a show made for people and by people where there is just nothing but like gags and goofs
And
and
there was a lot of hope at the end
funnies
of the
and
90s and
hope
into the new
and
millennium.
love.
Like, oh, we're in the
Right.
new millennium.
It was
All of
so the
this. Yeah.
hopium, like I keep saying, the hopium in that show is a hopium you only get
Yeah.
pre 9/11. And
Yeah.
like there is something so meaningful about that now because it you see how far away from that we've gotten, both in the content. Everything has to have a dark underbelly to it nowadays, but also in the literal visuals that we're seeing, right? Like everything is dark. You turn on your TV, you're watching Prestige TV or probably even Disney Channel these
Give
days.
us a
I haven't
blue
checked in.
spotlight. We know it's night.
Right.
I want, listen, I want to see. I'm still so mad at that final season of Game of Thrones. I'm like, I don't think I've seen it.
I am so you made me watch for so many hours, and then all of a sudden, first of all of a sudden these bitches start time traveling. It took them
That dragon?
one episode. It took them one episode to get to places that it would have previously in previous seasons would have taken them half the season.
Yeah.
And I'm like, now how did you get there so fast? You're time traveling now. And that hasn't been established in this world with you. So what are we doing? And then you're building up to you as a show, as a narrative, are building up to the biggest battle that we have likely ever seen of like a continuous serialized show on television. I'm not talking about like Band of Brothers limited series, right? I'm talking about a show that
was a decade.
Purposefully had
it was a decade long. That was the last time I feel like we had something resembling a monoculture
where everyone was locked in because they were like, they're here. Winter's no longer coming. I
think in them not sticking the landing of that,
ruined
I think
monoculture
that had
for us.
something.
Let's blame them.
I think that had something to do with ruining. It's like, why are we all getting invested in the same show again? They're just going to either cancel it or it's going to be shit. Like they're not going to stick the landing.
And it's like for them to
and you know what? Now that I'm on that tangent, I feel like there's something to that because there are so many new shows people do not want to give time to because Netflix or Amazon Prime or whoever, whatever new streaming service it is just going to cancel it and we're not going to find out. Like we're not going to know where it's going.
I think about Sense8 and every day.
We just had it with Wheel of Time. This massive show that was critically beloved and apparently quite popular on Prime. Like apparently it was in the top shows worldwide consistently, and each season was getting better and was getting more viewers. And they just randomly canceled it after the best season they had.
Every day of my life, I wake up and I think about how Netflix canceled The Society. And I don't know if you watched The Society.
Oh, it's like the CW. Is that? It's like an old CW show. Is that the one where
that's maybe the 100?
No,
that's maybe. I'm trying to think. There is a CW
no. What am I
with
thinking of?
There
was some weird. It got like 2 seasons, and they're they're magical people or something. And I think there was a Rose. Something.
Was that not the 100? No, that was something else. But yes, that was
a Netflix thing.
That was a show,
and that was very much like the CW. It was like
and I say I love the CW. I'm on record many times as loving the CW content because I know where things in culture should be placed.
The secret circle.
It doesn't upset me. It doesn't upset me because I know what I'm watching. I know what I'm getting when I turn the CW on, and it's something that will enjoy me. But The Society was a show on Netflix that. I'm forgetting. There's an original, very, very famous story. It's kind of like Lord of the Flies, kind of, where it's like all of these kids are in a town. They go on a field trip, and when they come back, they realize that all the adults in the town.
I have watched this,
and so they have to recreate their own society.
They come back, and all the adults are dead, right?
Yes,
or
gone.
Yeah.
They don't know what happened to them. They've just disappeared.
I've watched this. It was great.
It was incredible. And then if I am remembering this correctly, it actually was renewed for a second season, but then the pandemic happened. And that show, as you can imagine, is an ensemble cast. It's got like 20 to 30 kids in it that are named characters whose
Sure.
storylines you're following. And so if you're trying to make that show with pandemic precautions, it gets to be very, very expensive. But instead of halting production on the second season and just coming back in a couple years or like waiting and seeing, they just canceled the show. And it was such a fresh original story, not original, but like a newfound take on something old, like we were saying earlier, with an incredible cast. Catherine Newton was acting her little behind off
She
in that
was.
show. And it also was clearly building towards an actual explanation about where the parents went.
Mhm.
Like, because the final shot is some sort of teaser about the parents being like, where are our kids, right?
Yeah.
And so it's not just it was all building towards something, and it wasn't just a sort of empty plot device. And the cancellation of that show, I think, radicalized me in a way that not many other things have, because it just felt like, okay, I had to sit through Game of Thrones, that let me down. I finally start to find the things I'm interested in, and they no longer exist. Or what I find to be even worse, you have shows like I was saying, Shogun. I also think the first season of Russian Doll, Natasha Lyonne's Russian Doll, was a lot like this, where you have a perfect singular season of television that has an ending that you feel like, oh, that was beautiful. This needs to end here. And then instead of bringing back the society for season 2, Netflix is like, okay, well, let's do Russian Doll season 2. And then season 3. And then it just gets progressively less interesting and good than it was in the very, very first season. And I don't know. I think that's ruining me. I think that's ruining culture. I think that's ruining my life.
Well, I think another problem is there are shows that people are willing to take the risk on. They're willing to go all in on, and then there's 5 years between seasons for some reason. So why not just let it have been a mini Wednesday? And this is a big problem with a lot of Netflix shows. But a lot of shows, in this streaming world where we're dumping all of the episodes all at once, and then production schedules and yada yada. Avatar: The Last Airbender is supposed to take place within 1 year, and it's going to be years between seasons. Wednesday, years between seasons. Lots
but
of
stuff. The strike. No, I'm kidding.
Well, sure, and I get that,
but
invest in it, make it all together, or something, or have a plan, have a contingency, or who wasn't affected by the strike? A24, because they were like, "What do you want us to do?" Yes, okay, we'll do that. Like, get on board. Do you want to make this, or do you want?
It's worth it, right? Like Severance season 2, an incredible season of television, well worth waiting all of the years for. And sometimes
also doesn't rely on child actors.
Yes,
some of the stuff I'm like, okay, season 1, Stranger Things. Season 1, you're all 10, and the actors are all actually 10. By season 5, you're supposed to be 14, and you're all 37.
And you look 25. Oh God,
they're all somehow older than me now.
It's been such.
I saw the little sister just graduated high school, and
my God,
the little sister.
You can't spell America without Erica.
Yes, the little sister from Stranger Things just graduated high school, but in the timeline of the show, she's what?
She's still
13,
like, I don't know, 13,
12, 10,
something like that.
Yeah, just graduated high school.
Oh God, watching what's happened to that show,
I know,
has become one of the greatest sadnesses, I think, of my life. That show felt so like, for kids. So I was born in 96, but because of my mother, I know. I said earlier, I'm a baby. It's fine. We don't need to talk about it.
I was 10.
We don't need to talk about it. It's okay. And
I watched.
And I'm sure
I
you
watched
were killing
Titanic
the game
in a theater.
And you know what? So did I, but on a re-release later. So no. But
That's like when I'm like, oh yeah, I watched Star Wars in the theater, and they're like, what? Who shot first?
Right. Because I saw the prequels.
Yep.
Oh God, Hayden Christensen, also a sexual awakening for me. It's the Twinks.
Oh,
but
I went to go see one of those prequels, and we were supposed to go in a group. And then the rest of the group canceled, but it was just me and this one other guy, and that just happened to be the guy that I had the biggest crush on in the whole world. And of course, he's straight, but I was like, I'm gonna pretend this is a date. It was not. It was not a date. Nothing happened, and there's
Okay,
not a love
but
story there. But I was like,
but
the
this is
universe.
giving
Yeah.
practice.
Yes.
This is practice.
Yeah.
Mama, let's research. You were researching. You were researching.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love that for you.
Yeah.
But yes, even even though I was born in 1996, with the mother that I have, whom I love very, very much.
Hi, Mom.
She is
Hi, Mother Goff.
Hi, Mom.
Wait,
Hi.
it almost sounds like the Tangled villain, Mother
I know,
Gothel.
that's Mother Gothel. What's very funny is like her last name has nothing to do with my last name. Her and my father are not married anymore. However, she will still appreciate the shout out. Hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom.
She very much is like, she made me like an 80s kid. Like, we love 80s movies, 80s TV shows, 80s music. Like, we love it all.
My mom did the same. We have a great love for Dirty Dancing in this house.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Like, it's that core.
Yeah.
Dirty Dancing core.
Hated the sequel. Havana Nights.
It's bad.
Hated the sequel. Why?
I also.
Why did we? That's another one where it was like, let the IP die. Just let it die.
That's another one. And yeah, and like and my mom also loves like camping. Like, when Kinky Boots the musical came out, we were like, no, but we've seen Kinky Boots the movie. Yeah. Like we were like, but did y'all not know this was a movie? Yeah. Like, that's the type time my mother and I are on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so watching Stranger Things felt like such representation for me, because it was like, not only is it fantasy and is it nerdy kids and is it a black kid that's like, all my friends are white and I don't know how to be black in this white town with these white friends and also be a nerd, but also it was the 80s. It was like everything that I had not personally experienced but had grown up being like, this is what a true childhood is like, and watching that show just devolve into what it has devolved into. I'm
gonna make a bold, brave confession here. I did not watch the latest season. I started watching the latest season, where it's like the guy and he's also a project, or I don't know. But then I stopped, because I was like, I don't think I care anymore. I think I stopped caring.
I would not continue watching myself if it wasn't for my
job. Yeah.
So I think that is a good decision. I think that we all need to protect our peace in whatever ways we can these days, because that becomes essentially an impossible task the further we go on. And not watching the later seasons of Stranger Things is absolutely a phenomenal way to protect your peace. I feel like the last season anyone should entertain watching is the one where Max is introduced and you get the whole like running up that hill.
Yeah.
Bush.
That was good.
Yeah, like that's the last season where I was like, all right, this show still has
that's
some
the one
wheels.
where
everything after
was
that.
His name Billy? Was the brother Billy?
Yes.
That's the one where Billy, he gets like a bit of a redemption arc right there at the end.
Yeah.
That was
Digger Montgomery.
Honest to God, hot. If that had been the series finale,
I would have been fine.
Great television show, great run.
I would have been
fine.
Great
run.
I would have loved it.
We all died. We woke up. The town was a dream, or whatever the fuck. I don't know. Make a quick little button ending or whatever. I'm good.
And just
big showdown in a mall of all places. Yes.
That's so. You're right. It's so. I've also.
I am right. I tell people that often.
And you know what? Tell them that I stand with you. I don't even know what the argument is, but just be like, well, I'm right because Nadira says so. So there you go. Absolutely. And do it just like that. I wrote a piece about there's an episode of The Last of Us in the first season that takes place in a mall. Of course, it takes place in a mall in the game as well. Mm-hmm. But I wrote about how the mall is just such a perfect setting for a coming of age story, and how it is a sort of dying setting. Like kids in the mall, coming of age in the mall, or having that as a backdrop is not necessarily something that's as relatable these days. And I was so fond of that piece and that episode of The Last of Us. And you're absolutely right. If Stranger Things had ended with a huge battle in a mall, I would have been here with it. Also,
I do think there's an issue though with these game adaptations. I do think that there are some stories. I haven't watched the new season, but I have been told by people who do love the adaptation. Yeah. I have been told that, like, listen, the game does this better in every conceivable way, but also this is just a problem with adapted media. Sometimes it being a game, it's just better storytelling because you can do things in this world in this format that you cannot translate into live action. I haven't seen the second
Yes.
season. That might be unfair criticism, but I have seen
No,
things adapted from games that I
that's
have liked where I'm like, ugh.
that is exactly. So the first
I think this is
season,
why
I
so many
think,
people are wary of, other than the horrible transphobes, of like the Legend of Zelda adaptation.
yeah,
Because it's like,
yeah,
this is a big. Also, which Legend of, like, what is the
yeah,
Legend
yeah,
of
literally,
Zelda? Like,
yeah,
which
exactly.
timeline,
Like
which set of
which timeline,
characters?
which right, exactly.
Are you
It's
doing Link
that
to the
that game is
Past? Are you doing
sprawling.
Ocarina of Time? Like,
Yeah,
which
I
Legend of Zelda?
I okay. I
Though
will
Hunter
actually also,
Schafer should be Zelda no matter which.
and that's T, and I 100% stand with that. That
If
oh God,
Hunter
I love
Schafer just
Hunter.
wants to do a live stream where she
Yeah,
just
just
serves as
cosplays,
Zelda,
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
I will
yes.
watch that. I will pay
I'll
to
send
watch that.
roses, whatever.
In some vintage Mugler,
Yes,
I will.
yeah,
I would pay a pretty penny to see that.
yeah.
I will also
Hunter
preface this
Schafer's
by
one woman
saying,
show, The Legend of Me.
and let's crowdfund, let's crowdsource this so that we can get this made.
Yeah.
I will also preface this final point on The Last of Us by saying that I have to go soon, but
Yes. Yeah.
to end
We're
on a
way over
bad
time.
note,
Sorry.
no, it's okay. To end on a bad note, yeah, The Last of Us season 2, I 100% agree with that criticism. I think that the first season was such good television, incredible adaptation television. The second season, what made the show special, and I can't necessarily speak to this because I'm only just now playing the game. I haven't actually played I literally, my friend just dropped off their PlayStation a week ago. Like, I'm just now starting the game. But what I ascertain made the game special, but even more so made the show special, is the relationship between Joel and Ellie.
Mm-hmm.
Pedro Pascal grounds that show
Mm-hmm.
in a way
Mm-hmm.
that is just necessary.
Yeah.
And something happens in the
He
second
was
season
also the
where
best
Pedro
part of
Pascal,
Game of Thrones, too.
absolutely. Oberyn Martell, you can hit my line anytime.
That season was the best.
Well, it was the best.
It
you
was.
can come back to life and then hit my line anytime. Love
Hit
you.
my,
But,
yeah, sure. I saw that. I saw that edit. I saw that.
Yeah.
My mom might be listening to this later.
And you know what? I love gardening. So, but yes, the second season, for a specific reason I will not spoil, Pedro Pascal is only in the first couple of episodes. And the show really, really struggles without him in it. And I love Bella Ramsey, another Game
Great
of
actress.
Thrones reference, but great
The Worst
actor.
Witch is incredible.
But I do think that the writing in the story is the character of Ellie is annoying as hell. But like when you're playing the game, you spend so much hours in her brain. You have to like cook and survive as her. So when she's slighted, you feel slighted. And when she's annoying, it feels justified. And you don't get that with a TV show. So certain concessions need to be made in the story when you realize that the thing that grounded the first season of the show isn't going to be there, and you actually need that thing or a presence like that for the television adaptation, because what you don't have are the hours of gameplay in this character's head to keep her relevant and relatable, right? Like, if you don't have that father-daughter relationship anymore, then what is the show about?
Which is why True Blood worked for a lot longer than it should have. It did
Yes.
eventually fall right off the rails, just
Yes.
right off the rails.
It did.
But it did work longer than it should have because they kept characters who should have died.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's
Lafayette.
and I do think
Sorry, I forgot
that,
his
like,
name there for a second.
yes. And
Yes.
I do think that, God, he was also beautiful. Wow, God, I love True Blood.
Mm.
That's one I should rewatch. But I do think that the loss of Joel founds the entire moral of the second game and therefore the rest of the show, right? So you can't actually not kill that character. That he has to die at some point, because that's literally what the second part of the show is about. However, I do think that there are other freedoms that the first season took with standalone episodes, with extrapolating other storylines out, right? Like the Bill and Frank episode that does not exist in the game. And I wrote this whole piece for Slate about how if you're not going to have Joel, then you need to take other liberties with the material. And there were so many opportunities. You have Jeffrey Wright in the second season portraying Isaac incredibly, right? Isaac is this character who he used to be a part of the, like in the show, he used to be a part of the sort of federal government aid that then turned corrupt. And he was so upset by it turning corrupt that he then jumped to a resistance group, then became the leader of that resistance group, and ended up in a sort of turf war with a religious cult that then made that resistance group even more corrupt than the original federal government group that he didn't like, right? And that to me is great TV. That's an hour I would watch. And it's like there are so many liberties that the show took in the first season that it refused to take in the second season, even though it was really the second season that needed it without Joel. And because you don't have the machinations of gameplay here, because you don't have all those hours endearing you to specific characters and getting you to care about specific things. And so it really falls down in a story level, partially because it sticks to the game too much, but also not in other ways. And so it is like, I don't know, we'll see what happens with the third season, but I was a little disappointed with the second season, mostly because I just believe in them to have the ability.
So some takeaways as a pop culture journalist, pop culture writer for people who are tuning in to get your expertise as a pop cultureist. Where are you watching? What are you watching for new media? Like not necessarily what shows specifically, but like how do you find your next watch, your next read, your next whatever, and what's giving you hope about the landscape of pop culture?
Multiple. So I always go in two directions. One, I always try and keep my ears to the ground with what's popular, because again, I think the moment we stop being interested in what the masses like is the moment that we've lost. So I'm always trying to figure out why the biggest movie in the world is the biggest movie in the world or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. I'm also always looking towards film festivals to see what's coming out of Cannes, to see what's coming out of the Venice Biennale, to see what's coming out of all these sort of indie houses, to kind of really suss out where the original stories are. In the moments where I'm really flailing to figure out what to listen to, what to read, what to watch, I go back and I read, watch, listen to something that came out before that I didn't get a chance to. If you didn't read 1984 in high school or whatever, when you're like, wow, I don't have a good book to read, go back and read like a classic.
They still exist.
There's so many. They still exist.
You can still read them.
In the moments
they didn't
like,
go
oh,
away.
God, exactly. In the moments where I'm like, oh gosh, I don't want to go to the theater. You know what I do? I boot up my Criterion and I'm like, let's watch some neo-noir. Let's watch some French New Wave. Let's watch a Japanese film. Really, truly, there's so much out there. And I think I get so much from going back into the past than I do from honestly continuing to keep along with what's going on now. And I think that that's such a lost art. And I feel it with music as well. Not enough people are listening to like neo soul. They're just complaining about today's R&B. Right. And I'm like, well, you could go back and like listen to Lauryn Hill and D'Angelo if you wanted to.
It's still there. You can stream it. You can listen to it.
Exactly. So I think that's my thing is I always try to go in like both directions, you know?
And if people want to follow you on social media, where can they do that? And where can they read your work?
You can follow me on almost every platform at Call Me Nadira. That's call with 3 L's because someone took the 2 L's. That person is not me. So Call Me Nadira with 3 L's on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky. On TikTok, I am You Don't Want My Opinion.
Yes,
even though
that should be the name of our spinoff podcast.
I mean, hey, I'm very much down for the site. I was very serious about this.
You're getting my phone number right after this. We're doing this.
Beautiful.
Nadira Goffe, thank you so much for being here and spending so much time with me. This was so fun. Lovely. I love talking about pop culture because people write it off. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And thank you for like shouting me out and giving us some shine, giving us some culture critics some shine.